Hey guys, it's Sam Danes from Ardento here. Thanks for tuning in. I'm really excited to bring to you part one in a video series we are creating on how to implement Zoho CRM like a professional. We here at Ardento have been a Zoho partner for over 6 years, and we've implemented Zoho CRM all across Australia in a huge amount of different industries, ranging from businesses with just a handful of employees through to businesses with hundreds of employees and very complex implementations. The idea behind this series of videos is to give you some of the insight and some of the knowledge that we've built over these years of implementing the solution professionally, so that you can take that information away and, if you want to, apply that to your own Zoho implementation. Now, a preface, we're not going to go through too much of the general usability of the software. This is really going to be for those people who want to understand how to actually implement and configure the software for their business. There's plenty of resources online on general usage around Zoho CRM, or please reach out and we can help you with your questions specifically. But otherwise, we really want to focus on how to actually get the software set up and working for you and doing it in a professional way. We're really sharing all of our knowledge and expertise around the implementation of the product. So let's get stuck into it. I've got on my screen here a demo version of Zoho CRM. Zoho organizes its modules across the top here in a main menu. Now, the modules are really the core areas of the system that are going to be holding the information within your organization. Think of each one of these as a table of data, and they're connected and related to each other. So here we've got leads and deals related to our sales processes, and of course we've got contacts and accounts, and we have these options across the top here. So one of the first thing you want to kind of understand is thinking about what modules are relevant to my business. And every business is going to be different, and they're not all going to be required. So we want to think about what are the modules that matter for me, and how am I going to use these modules? So the first area I want to introduce you to is the setup area, which is this cog icon here. When we click on the cog icon, we're presented with a setup page. There's a lot of different options in here, but the main area we're going to be focusing in this particular video is customization. And we're going to go down to the fields and modules area. So when you are on the fields and modules area under customization, you're presented with a list of the modules that you have in your system. Now, the very first thing I would suggest you do when setting up Zoho CRM for your business is decide what modules you need and what modules you don't, and turn off the modules that are no longer relevant. You can do that by using the Organize Modules button here. You'll see that we can tick and untick the modules that aren't relevant for my business. So for instance, in this one, I will turn off feeds and sales inbox. You can go back and turn them on later if you need to, but we're going to keep the user interface tidy by removing the modules that don't matter right now for my business. Some, you can see, have got the exclamation mark next to us, letting us know that we can't actually turn those modules off because there's some sort of workflow or some sort of rule set up behind them. And we'll go into a little bit more around workflows and rules in a later video, but for now we're going to leave these ones ticked, and we've just unticked the ones that don't matter. Now, we can also rearrange these, and it's a good idea to think about having the modules that you think are most relevant and most needed at the front of your user interface, so on the left of the main module, and we can just drag these around. So I've got home, leads, deals, contacts and accounts, and activities. If I wanted to put products above analytics, I could do so, or if I wanted to remove products from my list, I can simply untick the checkbox. And I'm going to click Save. Now my modules have been organized, and I've got just the modules that I care about. Something else you want to think about is, what names should I give my modules? Now, it's important to know you can rename any of these modules across the top. You can give them a name that is unique to the way that you speak and you work within your business. For instance, deals representing my sales pipeline. If I hover over the More button, the three dots here, I get some options. And the second option is rename. So I'm going to go ahead and rename this. I need to enter in a plural form. So I've already got opportunities saved there in my browser. I'm going to use opportunities, and opportunity being the singular form of that module name. So now by hitting save, I've actually renamed that module from deals to opportunities. So it's important that we use language that's familiar to us and our team. That's going to help adoption. It's going to help people want to use the software because it feels familiar to them. If the naming convention is foreign, it can be confusing. So we want to keep things friendly and in line with our normal language. So we've organized our modules and we've renamed the ones that we need to. So hopefully you've gone through a process now and you've got the modules that matter and you've got the modules in the name convention you want. We want to start thinking now about the tab groups. So a tab group is, we have the modules enabled, but we might not always need access to all modules at all times. Again, we want to create a user experience that's easy for you and easy for your team. You notice here when I've got a number of modules enabled, a bunch of the modules would be collapsed underneath the More button. If I had lots of modules enabled, I would see a bigger list under here. Or if my screen resolution was a bit more bunched up, they would list under here. I can actually group together modules and show and hide modules on my main menu using tab groups. So I've got tab groups here on the on the right of the module screen, and I've already created one called Sales. So this is a tab group that appears here called Sales, which is just going to show those modules related to sales activities. And see how the user interface now is much cleaner? I've removed any of the modules that don't matter. Of course, I can go back to the all tabs at any time and see the relevant modules that matter for me. So tab groups are a great way to even further clean up your user experience. So definitely something to think about there using tab groups. So the next thing we're going to want to think of is when you sign up for Zoho CRM, if you've signed up for a trial or you've already got a paid subscription, you're probably going to find that there are a lot of fields already enabled in the system. And if I go to my leads module here, I'm listed with just some leads in a view here. I click on one of these demo leads that I've got. We've got a collection of fields. We can see that there's a collection of fields here that have been already enabled as part of the CRM by default. Now, not all of these fields may be relevant. For instance, fax number. That might not be relevant to you. Fax numbers are becoming increasingly rare. So perhaps we want to remove or add fields to the screen definition. And this is an absolute core part to starting out your Zoho CRM implementation journey. I suggest you actually do this mapping out, perhaps on paper or on a spreadsheet or a Google Sheet, rather than actually just diving in and start making changes. We want to make these changes with some thought process behind them. It's easier to map out the fields that you think you might need and the relationships between the modules and the modules you may need before you jump into the CRM and just start turning fields on or off. You're going to end up creating fields that you don't require. They'll be the wrong type of field. So taking that moment to kind of stop, building out a field template and a module template will actually make this process a lot easier. So how do we add, remove, and change the fields on our modules? We go back to our setup area using the cog icon, and then we come down to customization, modules and fields. And then we go to the module that we wish to customize. I'm going to start with the leads module. So when you click on the leads module to begin customization, you're presented with something called layouts. Now we're going to talk about layouts in a subsequent video because they allow us to do a bit more advanced organization of our fields. But for now, you're just going to click on the standard module, which is going to be the core layout that you have in your system. And now we're presented with the fields that are part of this module. These are the fields that we can edit and insert when creating a lead record. Now we're going to find the fax module. And of course we can click and drag the field positioning around to move it into a position that matters. And we can also click the little 3 settings button here. And we've got some additional options under here, which is worth knowing. Mark as required. Obviously you can see some have a red line next to the field. If the field is marked as required, it means that the user is going to have to enter that before they can save a record. Set permissions we're going to come back to in a later video. What we do want to do in this instance is remove the field. Now I can remove the field and it's going to give us a warning to let us know that it's going to be removed out of this layout and we can remove the field and it will put it into the unused field section. Now, that's now been removed from my screen definition. The data, however, in that field, if I had records in there that were already using the facts field, it hasn't been lost. I can come under this unused field section and find the facts module and re-drag it back onto my screen definition. And any of the fields that were in that, any of the data that was in that field would instantly be available to see and view and report on again. So that's a nifty feature in Zoho CRM. Removing fields from your screen definition does not delete the data behind the field. But look, in this instance, I'm actually going to click remove field. We're going to get rid of it from the screen definition because I don't need to see it there. And then I'm going to hit save. Now my layout has been saved. The changes have been there. And if I was to go back to my lead record, I would see that now the facts module, facts field rather, has been removed. So let's go through some of the other fields that we can use within our field definition and understand a couple of what these mean. So we've got things like single line and multi-line text fields, just a simple free text field, a name or a description that you may want to use. If we need to record an email address field or an additional email field, we have an email field type and a phone. We've got pick list and multi-select pick list. Now, this is like a drop-down field, if you're familiar with that. We can see that the lead source field in this particular instance is set as a pick list field. We can see with option 1. What if I wanted to change the values in this pick list field? Again, using the setup, I can come down to edit properties. And here's the list of values in my pick list. I can, again, rearrange these. I can rename them if I need to, or I can click the plus to add a new option, or the minus to remove an option. And that's how you can manage a pick list or a multi-select pick list field. And then we've got date and date time, number and auto number, if we would like a field to auto-generate a sequential number when creating records. We can capture currencies and decimals and percents, a longer integer, a checkbox and a URL, pretty self-explanatory. A lookup and formula field I'm going to leave for another video as they're a little bit more advanced. As well as subforms. The main modules that the main fields rather that you're going to be interested in are those ones at the top here, and they're going to be able to suit the various types of data that you're going to be interested in. We also want to know about what is called a section. I've already got another section here called system fields. I can add sections anywhere into my definition and rename this. And then I can drag in any fields that match that section. Now think of a section as just another way of organizing the data on your module, keeping things tidy. It's important that we keep an idea on how we're actually going to interact with the data. And that's why I recommend that you do this outside of the system before jumping in. Think about organizing your fields and your modules and sorting them out so that you have a clear understanding of why you're capturing that data. What does it mean? Why should we be doing it? That's a better way to start this customization journey rather than jumping in and starting to customize. A couple of other areas you need to be aware of is there are some things between system fields and custom fields. All of the fields we have on the screen now are deemed system fields. These are the fields that are universal to the system when they're turned on. You can remove them from the screen definition, but you can't completely delete them. They will stay there. If we're going to add a custom field, so let's just drag a new date field on here. You notice how when we call this date, let's call this contact date, the date we contact the lead. Notice how the color of this particular field label is a slightly yellower, brownish color versus the sort of the blackish color. That denotes that it's a custom field and it can be added and deleted as required. It is not a system field. So guys, we've gone through a few of the field types. We've rearranged our field definition on the leads module. We've created a new section. So now I can save my module here. If I use my recent menu to go back to the lead record, Mr. Christopher, which I was on before, you'll see here's my new date field, ready to enter in as necessary. And notice my facts field has gone. And you can go through each of the modules that you have created and add and remove the fields to create a user experience at capturing the data that matters for you. And that's really at the very heart of the first steps in configuring your Zoho CRM solution to work, about organizing your modules and defining the fields that you think are going to be relevant. The next part I want to finish off on today's video is just some understanding around how you can control the view of data and filtering. This is more about the user interface and driving around here, but it's important that you understand how this relates to the customization that you've been making through there. When you're looking at any particular module in Zoho CRM and you click on that module, you're going to be presented with a list of, or a view of records that match that criteria. If you come up to near the Create button, you're going to have a drop-down menu that gives you a couple of options. A list view, which is probably most commonly understood. It doesn't have any visual representation. It simply just has a list of records. A Kanban view, which you can configure to look at your data in a columnized format, or a canvas view, which shows things with an image at the front and center. And then on the left-hand side of your view, you have what's called the filter pane. You can collapse and show the filter pane by clicking on this icon here. Filtering allows you to be able to put some criteria around the view that you're looking at. For instance, in this, I might want to look at leads by source. Lead source is a field. And I want to say, show me the cold call leads. And I click apply the filter. And now a filter has been applied to limit the records in there. Now, the great thing about Zoho CRM is all of these filters can be applied to any of the custom fields you create as well. So when you're defining those fields and modules, you want to think, how do I want to filter and group and categorize my data? Because that's going to define the types of fields and the values of those fields that you're going to want to create. I can actually save my filter and use it for later, and I've already done that here. You can see that I've got a cold call leads. It's got a number 2 letting me know that there's 2 records there. If I click that, it's going to apply the filter, and then I can click the clear button to remove that filter. And it's good to know that if you're not seeing all the records that you want to make sure that you have no filters applied. Now, the filtering can be used in unison with what they call a view criteria. Now, this drop down at the top here is saying all leads. That's the default, meaning there is no criteria applied. It's going to show me all the lead records. But I can also choose one of the pre-configured one if I just want to look at leads assigned to me under my leads, or open leads and the criteria behind them. I can also select the star, which will make the view a favorite. And I suggest you do that for something like all leads or any of the views that you're going to use regularly. Now, it's also important to understand that you need to be aware when you have a view selected. Because if I have a view selected other than all leads, I'm going to see a restricted list of records. It's going to have some criteria applied to it. If I want to edit that criteria, I can come next to my filter and I can click the Edit button. And that will show me the criteria that has been applied to this view. Lead source is cold call. Now, if I wanted to create my own, I can pull the lead drop down and I can come down to custom view. And now I can give it a name and define my criteria, and I can choose to share it with other users in the system or just keep it for me. You want to make sure that if you're confused about what records you're seeing, make sure that you've got all leads or all contacts or all opportunities selected and that there's no filter criteria applied. That's going to be critical to making sure that you're not looking at the skewed version of the data. Now, all of these things that I've showed you around filtering and views and the way that you are presented with the records, that is universal across all of the modules that you see in the system. So what you learn and understand about that particular module in the leads module can be applied to any other module in the system. And the same goes for customizing the fields. The process is the same. We're finding the module we want to customize, we're editing the field definitions and rearranging those, and then we're saving our module definition. So guys, that concludes our first video in our Implementing Zoho CRM Like a Professional series. This hopefully will set you up so that you can plan to define your modules and the fields that you need within those modules. And this is really at the heart of getting started, with your Zoho CRM implementation, and it'll actually lay the foundation for all of the other areas of the system that we're going to explore. So I hope that was useful, guys. Stay tuned for the next video in our series where we'll deep dive a little further into advanced customization options and look at things like lookup fields, subforms, and layouts. Thanks for watching.